Church Growth Unleashed, diving into all things leadership and church growth. Provide the help, encouragement, insights that you need along the journey of growing yourself as a leader and your ministry. Well, welcome back to the Church Growth Unleashed podcast. I'm your host, Danny Anderson, and this is the place where we talk about all things leadership, church growth, and I'm excited to be with you today. In the studio, I have my friend Rachel Long with me here today. I'm going to introduce her in just a second, but we are going to be talking about something today that every single church goes through, every single leadership team at a church goes through. And by the way, organizations, if you're not in ministry, if you're a marketplace leader, you go through this as well. And that is when leaders transition off your team or when staff members transition off your team. Rachel and I have been doing ministry together for a long time. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We have seen this, unfortunately, go very, very poorly at times, and very rarely does it go well. And so we're going to dive into that today. But transitioning is hard. Transitioning, when team members leave your team, it's hard because it's emotional. You have to think through a timeline. You have to think through who's going to fill the gap. You have to think through how jobs are going to change and roles are going to change. And there's often a lot of pain and a lot of risk involved. And so transitions can be very, very difficult. And that's why oftentimes they go poorly. So Rachel's here with me today. She's a special person in my life. She has been on our staff now for 13 and a half years, but at our church for 23 years. And she'll tell you a little bit more about that. But years ago, she served as our nursery and preschool director, then transitioned into the family pastor's role at our Banta campus, then oversaw all of our family ministries, then moved into a position where she oversaw all of our multi-sites and campus pastors, and has been on my executive leadership team now, overseeing expansion and a bunch of other things, and not much that Rachel hasn't touched in our church. You've been involved in almost all of our campus launches, very hands-on, and also you helped launch my first podcast, which is the Breakthrough podcast. So we've been on podcasts many times before together, but you're an incredibly special person today. Why don't you tell our audience today why I asked you to come on the podcast today to talk about this particular issue?
Whew, so here we go. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to come on and asking me to come on. And this one's a toughie. This one's a toughie for me and for you. But I just appreciate you allowing me to keep leading in my decision to leave staff at Emmanuel. Our family has been entrenched at Emmanuel since we came when my oldest child was 6 months old, and she just graduated from law school. So it's been a long time of being connected to Emmanuel. And during the course of our lives, we've done a lot of different things at Emmanuel, but it's been our church primarily, and then also secondarily my place of employment. So, but the time has come for me to start a new endeavor, and that is exciting, but also I've learned the true definition of bittersweet, that it is exciting to get to move forward, but also it's really difficult. But you've helped me along the way. So I'm thankful that you asked me here today, because having been here for 23 years as either someone attending the church or someone on staff, has, just like you said, seen it gone really, really bad. And when it does, people don't just stop working where they worked, they lose their church. And that's really hard. Yeah. And I didn't want that. So, that's why we're here.
Yeah. So just to be clear for our audience, after being on staff for 13 and a half years, and remind me, how many of those years you were actually on my leadership team? Has it been?
I think it's 7.
7. Yeah,
7.
I was going to say 6 or 7. 6 or 7 years on the leadership team, helping us, the church, to launch campuses.
Yeah.
I mean, just you are have been an incredibly integral, impactful staff member, team member, and you're now leaving our team.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to feel that.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just not, I wouldn't say regular staff member. I don't mean that. It's not, but you are closest person to me on our team and the top leadership team, and here you sit. You still are working. Your last day is the end of September.
Yes.
September 30th, and so we're in the middle of you leaving.
We are in the middle of the transition and me leaving. Yes. And it's every day I'm reminded of we're in the middle of the incredible work that God has allowed me to do. We have a seasoned staff member here at Emmanuel that always reminds us this is work we get to do. And I really felt that over the years, that leading a church adoption, that was an incredible experience that it was amazing to watch how that church is now not tripled, not quadrupled, but it's like 5 times the size that it was when we came and started the adoption process there, and watching all the different ways you can do church adoption and multi-site, seeing my own family come to Christ and start serving, and they're at different campuses. We have a little inside joke that I have a cousin at every campus, but my family, we're on a relentless pursuit, and those are the people I love. So I can't say enough for what Emmanuel has done for my family, even if we're not talking about my children and my husband, but getting to be a part of that step by step and helping build the culture and helping build, just helping troubleshoot things along the way. Like as soon as you figure something out, then you're like, oh, and it could be 1% better if we did this, and we could do this, and we could do this. And so having that freedom to lead and watch Emmanuel grow, I couldn't trade that for anything. It's been a joy of my life. And it would be dishonest to not have talked to you when things changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Okay, so that leads us into our first point, I guess, or idea that I want to talk about today. I know our listeners are probably thinking, how in the world did you have the freedom, courage to come to me and basically tell me, hey, I think my time at Emmanuel is coming to an end.
Yeah.
Like, that's almost inconceivable.
Yeah.
For especially to be on the leadership team, and talk to our listeners today. How did that occur?
Well, and it wasn't premeditated. That's the first thing that I tell everybody. I never built an exit strategy, and that's true because I didn't plan on exiting. And when things started to happen with a nonprofit that we're going to talk about a little bit later, I could see that growing. You could see it growing too. I think one of the things that's incredibly important is to not give me the credit for all the courage, because the scene was set years ago while we sat around the senior leadership table mourning the loss of other senior leadership team members, and you saying, I want to have a culture where I can help these people that are close to me be able to transition well. And why do we not have that? Like, asking the really hard self-reflective questions, but questions of me and the other person on SLT at the time, to be able to dissect why, part of it's on the person and part of it's on the culture. So how did we as leaders build a culture that wasn't available? And I can tell you, when you said that stuck with me. Now, that's like almost a decade ago that happened, but I take you at your word that what you would say, if you're going to say that, you're going to stand behind it. So you set the stage for it. And then as the, this word employee, but like as the one that's serving at the church and working at the church, it was my responsibility to decide with God, are you going to believe your lead pastor? What is the character of your lead pastor, and are you going to be able to believe him, or you're not going to believe him? Are you going to trust, or you're not going to trust that what he said he meant? Yeah. Okay, so then dial back through like other interactions and there is a step of faith in it, but then there's also when you see that the ground is solid, it takes faith to step into it. My husband said he works for a global company, and he was like, if I went in, because I, practiced my plan of what I was going to say. He said, if I went in and said, hey, I think my time on staff is over, like quiet, gentle heart, he said they would come in with a cardboard box. And HR would have either packed my stuff and shipped it to me, or they would have just come and sat with me while I packed up. And yeah, they would have given me my 2 weeks pay, but that would have been the end of the story.
Because it's only a job.
It was only a job. It's only a job.
Yeah, and I think it's
not their church.
That kind of leads me to like what the first idea that I think in order to create a culture where transitioning is healthy or just done well, it begins with the senior leader giving his team permission to say, hey, if you feel God leading you in a different direction,
right,
or this is no longer a fit for you, I want to be part of that conversation.
Yeah.
I'm giving you permission to talk to me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to punish you for that.
Right.
There's not going to be consequences for that. Let me be involved in blessing the next phase of your life. Mm-hmm. That's the culture that I wanted. And I'm like, well, how do we create that? How do we create that? Because that's not what we were getting.
No.
What we were getting was, and this still, it just drives me bananas, is that people start interviewing for jobs behind our back.
Right.
Securing work. And then once they have a job, that they've been interviewing secretly for, then they come and they inform us, hey, my time here is done. I got a job over here. Well, when was that happening?
Right.
While you were working here,
right? Putting
on a fake, I love Emmanuel, face, like everything's great, and then you lay this on us, and it's just always made me feel like we were, this is a bad illustration, but like we were in a serious dating relationship.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you break up with me, but you tell me that you have another boyfriend. It's like, what?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's that same adrenaline rush.
You've been dating somebody, like you've been cheating on me.
No,
that's senior leaders. And not all the senior leaders here today are like, yep, that's how I feel. Of course. I don't think everybody understands that. Yeah. Anyway, it starts with, I realized I had to start giving people permission. Like, hey, include me in this process. I will get behind you. I'll bless you. I'll support you. Yeah. So that's kind of my first point.
Can I add a little nugget to that is actually interesting and countercultural in church world too, that I have found is when we are interviewing people, it's not just an internal thing that you expect. You expect that from people that might want to come on this team, because you have us ask right away, does your lead pastor know that you are interviewing for this job? Mm-hmm. And so that I have found is also something that like you're leading by even asking that question, you're helping us lead people to say it needs to be different in the church community when someone is moving church positions or moving out into another nonprofit or going into secular work. Like it needs to be different because it's not honest. It's not honest.
It's not.
And so I would say that you do that externally too, making sure that the people that are going to be joining the team.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And that's there is a lot of no when we ask that question. And
Well,
so
go back and tell him
yes,
that you're interviewing
have that
with us.
conversation
Yeah.
because at Emmanuel, you're going to have you lots of hard conversations. So it's really good that you just start practicing now.
That's great. So that leads us. This other point, this next point is kind of connected. In order to give permission to have that conversation, you really do have to trust God with your team, and that's tough because as a leader, your team is your team, and you want to hold on to them, and but in reality, the most important thing that I can do for you or anybody on our team is to say, hey, God has a plan for your life. And that plan may be here, it may not be here. If it's not here, that's what I want for you more than I want you here at Emmanuel. Right. And so that's a surrendering thing to say, God, Rachel is your daughter. And I want you to use me to help her to do all that you have planned for her. Not to do what you have planned for me. But as leaders, we have our goals and we have our vision. And here's the temptation with you. I'm just shooting straight with you. And we've talked a little bit about this. There's a temptation because you get so many things done is to just ignore the bigger story that God has for you and say, nope, she gets work done for me. I'm just going to keep her for myself. I'm not, and I remember what I said to you when you first said to me, my time at Emmanuel's coming to an end. I was like, no, it's not.
Yeah, you did.
So, no, that's not true. There's too much work to be
yes,
done.
we got campuses.
You cannot leave.
Right.
And I even felt the check in my spirit when I said that. Like, oh, you kind of acting like the big boss man, like you're God. And I'm like, I had to repent of that and essentially let you go.
Sure. And I think, first of all, if you're the person that's coming to have that conversation, you also need to remember that your lead pastor is a person. Like, hold space. This whole idea of 2 weeks and you're gone, that's corporate. That's corporate. So holding space for like you to get to feel your way through it. And I don't like this, and then to come back and talk. We had like a meeting, and initially, you are a good coach and you gave me some hard coaching, and it was good coaching that helped me reflect, because we both know I would have stayed at Emmanuel and stayed doing Joshua Center until you were at my funeral. Like, we know that I would have worked those two because I love them both incredibly, and they are deeply meaningful work. Both of them are. It is not squandering either way hours of my life. So it wasn't an ultimatum. That's not it. It was coaching, and then some weeks to think and pray through it, and me to be with God. And then it was, here's the response, and time for you to be with God. And then we told our team, and then time for them to be with God while you were on your study break before. So we're looking at like, I think it was a 2.5 month process altogether. If you wanted to have this drive-through leaving experience, then I would have been choosing then to throw the match and leave the ruin. And I don't know if you're at that spot, like how you get past that. And that could be a whole coaching thing you did. But if it's your job and it's your church and you're conflicted, that's start there. Don't start way out. But again, you have to have a stage that's set for you to be able to come.
Sure. It starts with the leader.
Yeah, it starts with the leader.
That's great. So good. So much I want to get into here. So we've talked about, giving permission, trusting God with your team, and then your team members have to trust you.
Yeah.
And you've already kind of alluded to this. Like, you chose to trust me. I said what I wanted, and you're like, okay, I'm going to bank on what he said he wanted. But as the senior leader, I think we have to give our teams reasons to believe
Yes.
that we really will come behind you and support you
Yeah.
and help launch you into the next phase of your life.
Yeah.
And, I've been much more aware over the last couple of years of how am I creating a culture where the people around me actually believe my words.
Yeah.
Why would they believe me to say, hey, if you feel like it's time to leave our staff, come to me, I'll support you, I'll work with you. Why would they believe that? Well, how have I treated the last 5 people who've left?
Mm-hmm.
Because that wake, that's what they're going to believe.
Right.
Did I work with them? Did I honor them? Was I positive about them as they left? Did I support them?
Right.
Instead of people are smart. Like, they don't just listen to your words; they watch your actions.
They watch your actions.
And so, here's the statement I wanted to make. I think this is so good for us. You create a culture of trust, one departure at a time.
Yeah.
So, like right now, you're leaving our team. In the process, we are creating culture.
Yeah.
Right now,
Yeah.
even through this podcast, talking about this. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about it publicly is because that creates culture.
Right.
Like, oh, that's something
Right.
you can talk about? Gosh, I thought that was like
Yeah,
taboo.
no.
You don't bring that up, because you might get a pink slip and
Right.
be asked to get a box.
Get a box,
and you
the
get
cardboard
walked out
box.
to your car. And so how do we crush that culture, that corporate employee culture? You do it one departure at a time by doing it one healthy departure at a time. So you got to give your team reasons to believe your words.
And I think it's fair to say, too, even if you haven't done that in the past, the best time was then, the next best time is now. So do it now, like your next one. And I will say this, too. I would add that you have been building trust with our family since the day that you and Jackie drove out to my brother's funeral. An hour and a half when I was an impact team member, which is a volunteer for us. So way back, you guys started establishing trust. So the individual trust then can yield the community culture. So when I ask you for something, you really considering it, you really thinking it through. And sometimes you have had to say no, but knowing that, like, this is the same person and the consistency, even though we're working to get better with every release from our staff, we also have had like a lot of time of trust chips built up. And I think that's how, too, we know where each other stand in the situation. Like, this is the same person that did that. Jackie's the same person that did that today. So it is consistent. And so I would just say to pastors, if I could, every little thing matters. Like, they are watching your actions, too, of the people that you're leading. And that was when I was a volunteer. So it's not just staff. Because we all know we have, like, at Emmanuel, we have thousands of unpaid people investing every single week to see people come to Christ and grow in Christ.
That's good.
Yeah.
So this next one is real quick, but this comes from my friend Sean Lovejoy. He says this a lot. When it comes to transitions, he says every staff member, every pastor, including yourself, is an interim pastor. And it's just so true. We get into this mindset that we're going to be doing this forever with each other forever.
Yeah.
And it's easy to fall into that. And and then when something does happen or someone says they're going to leave, it's soul crushing.
Yeah.
You're going to leave? What
Yeah.
are you talking about? And I definitely had to fight that, because in my
Right.
mind, I'm thinking you and I and the team, like, we're doing this till like we're 70.
Done. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe not 70.
Well,
maybe a little, but definitely longer than
Right.
than now.
Yes.
And so, I've got to remind myself, like, everybody's an interim pastor, and you have a departure date. I have a departure date, and so let's not. I think that just helps psychologically and emotionally not to get so tied down to a specific team or
Sure.
specific person.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that I don't love you any less.
Right.
It has nothing to do with that. It's just like, but it's just reality. People will come and go off your team. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that or how you feel about that.
Well, I just had one that it allows you in your humanity to respond instead of react. So then you have this like, okay, I knew this would come one time. I have a response, not maybe prepared, but like I know I'm going to respond to this. I'm not going to react to this. So
that's good. That's really good. Yeah. So that's just good for your brain. Everybody is an interim pastor. This next one I think is huge for us. I think I do it well, not to toot my own horn, but you do it probably even better than I do it. It's just to give honor.
Oh, yes.
It's just I honor you, you honor me. The statement I wrote down, I think this is worth you guys taking notes on this one. If everyone in the process feels honored, things stay healthy.
Yeah.
You know, when I talk about you privately, it's honoring. When I talk about you publicly, it's honoring. It's positive. And I trust that when you talk about me publicly, it's honoring. And when you talk to me privately, it's honoring.
Right.
And it's just like, man, trust.
Yeah.
Honor breeds trust. And when there's high levels of trust, you really can. It's not that the transition's easy. It's hard. It's hard.
It is.
It's hard emotionally. There's loss. There's gaps that need to be filled. It's not easy. It makes it a lot easier.
Right.
When there's high levels of trust. When that trust breaks down and you start feeling like somebody's talking about you or they're doing something wrong or throwing you under the bus. Oh man, I've been there. We've been there.
Yeah.
It is painful.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like you do this so well. And I think that's a big reason why this has been not easy, but easier.
Yeah. Well, and I know you can't know yet what it's like on this side is it means I get to keep my pastor. Like I get to keep this person that I've done ministry with in student ministries with you before you became the lead pastor. I get to keep that person, and so does my husband Jason, and so do my kids. Like they don't have to be like, oh my gosh, we got to go. There's Pastor
We got to
Danny.
find a new church.
We got to. Yeah. Whoa. Yes, we got to find a new church, or we've got to uproot or even a new community. I mean, we're a mega church in a small town. Like we can't be embarrassed and. I think it's so important because when you honor one another, you can walk in the light of the situation. And it teaches your staff as well, models for your staff, that there's nothing that can't be talked about. Whatever it is, just go to the person. So if I feel, even if I'm embarrassed and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go ask Danny, did you mean it this way when you said blah, blah, blah? You go. And you ask, and that's, and if you can do it with this, you can do it with anything that you've got going on in your team because this is hard.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of space for there to be gossip or there to be, will tell me the real story. Even when I'm texting people in the congregation that I want to be the one to tell them, I'm like, and Danny's walking with me every step of the way, but you didn't ask me to give you the text. You didn't ask to write the text that I sent to people. You aren't checking on it to see how it goes.
Yeah.
Like,
I trust you to honor me.
Yeah, I trust you to honor me.
Yeah, I mean that's
you
the
knew
beauty.
the text was going to be honored.
They're going to come. They're going to come, and
Sure.
and people are going to have questions. And
What's the real story?
What's the real story? What happened? How did this go sideways?
Yeah.
You know, and those are the things that can cause a transition to become very toxic.
Oh yeah.
And go sideways.
Yeah.
So you mentioned my next point, which was to keep the lines of communication open.
Yes. Yes.
And so, I mean, and that's hard to do when, you know, a question comes up or you hear something that, hey, he said this, she said this, or I heard this, or I heard that. The tendency is to maybe get your feelings hurt
Sure.
and be like, oh man, I can't believe he said that, or
Right.
can't believe that decision was made and I wasn't in the room, and you know, or if you just go to the person and say, I'm going to clear this up, I trust him, that keeps things from getting sideways, because
Yeah.
inevitably something's going to happen.
Sure.
Something's going to get said. I'm going to say something, I'm sure I will, that is like doesn't sound like it's in alignment with everything that's been going so smoothly.
Sure.
And it's going to be like, wait, question mark, which is kind of connected to one of our staff values, which is fill the gap with trust.
Yep. Believing the best.
Believing the best. We learned that from Andy Stanley.
We did.
When there's a gap created by something,
Yeah.
a comment, or I didn't follow through on something, or you didn't say do what you said you do, which is extremely rare. But when there is a gap, to say there's an explanation for that.
Sure.
I promise you that wasn't intentional.
Sure.
I'm going to go talk to her about it. And we've just done that for each other.
I think even when we sent out the staff email, I was a little tight in the chest about where it said, Rachel, we all know she would have worked until, she was in the grave doing both. And I was like, no, that the reverse is true. Like, that might make Pastor Danny look bad. And you were like, no, that I care more about you than I do about. So even like guarding each other is honor and believing the best too, because I know you would never say something to me to trap me or to push me out. That was never your intent. But everybody else didn't have that context.
Right.
So this is a hard thing from the internal perspective, but you don't just stop being a minister or a pastor because you're still shepherding as you're walking people through this.
Right.
You are, I am. And so being able to say, like, that might have been what you heard, but here's what's happening actually. Or that might be what you think because of your past experiences, maybe at a different church, but this is actually what's happening.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've only had 2 conversations that were a little bit like, and then no. Listen to all of it.
Yeah.
But it's hard for people to believe the best too when they're in pain and when they're like, and for leaders, this is something they should know. People's first reaction usually is, well, how's that going to affect me? But what's true in this scenario is people have started to come up to me, and this is heartbreakingly beautiful, telling me what my ministry has helped them do in their calling to work at a church or to be in ministry. And so I think we've set it up nicely. And if you can do that, believe the best, then you open up this whole different thing that I haven't gotten to experience. Like, I never got to tell the people that left otherwise what they had poured into me and what I appreciated
because that
them.
opportunity wasn't there.
Right.
Because the transition didn't go well.
Right. And that's the opposite of what happens when we don't believe the best, we don't honor. And
Yep. That's so good. Yeah. I think the last thing I would say about this for pastors today is, I feel an incredible urgency to make sure this transition goes well, and hopefully every other one that happens in the future, because it protects the church. Yes. It protects the kingdom. The Satan would love to get between us and drive a wedge and create hurt feelings. And I'm just like, I'm not letting that happen.
Right.
I am not. There's too much good work that has too many hearts have been changed. Lives of people have come into the kingdom. People have been saved. Campuses have been launched. Thousands of people have been baptized. And so I'm not about to let the enemy get anywhere close to ruining this. And transitions are that perfect situation where he can get in.
Oh, for sure.
Because emotions are high. People are like nervous. They don't know what the future holds. There's money issues at work, uncertainty, and boy, the devil can get in there and mess with that. And so I appreciate you coming to me, believing me. I know we're doing it right now.
We're doing it right now.
Trusting me and humbling yourself and submitting, not to my authority, but just the process. Like, hey, he really did say he'd support me.
Right.
And like, I submit to that. Yeah. And so I want to say thank you for that. You're protecting the kingdom. You're honoring Jesus. And it's hard, but it's really beautiful. And so I wanted to give you a chance to kind of tell people real quick, where is God calling you? What is he calling you to the Joshua Center? Tell them what that is, who you're going to be helping. Give us a little picture.
2 years ago, we were looking for some care for a kiddo that was in the church, just mental health counseling or counseling for a child specifically around grief, and we couldn't find it anywhere. And so, unfortunately, in 2005, I lost my kid brother and have navigated grief and loss over the years. And that piece of Joshua was his name, and that piece of having a kid in our congregation that didn't have a place where they could get grief support fired up this thing inside of me of wanting to start a nonprofit that served children and families to help them find hope and healing while they're experiencing grief and loss. I had you can call it naivete. I was focused on the two kids in front of me, and God was focused on something very different. And I didn't realize the explosion of need for care for grief counseling that there was. And so over the past 2 years, and this is with not working there full time, because I'm a big don't cheat the church hours person. So I would never cheat the church. But working a couple nights a week and Saturdays, we've served over 180 children. And that breaks down to about 60 families. We have a few adults that were in that family that we still see. And so Joshua Center is just growing and growing and growing. And there is very little indication that it won't keep growing. And so right now we have people who drive over an hour because we live in central Indiana, and there's nothing like this even down to Louisville. I have 3 clients from Seymour, which is about an hour away from, it's our farthest campus away. So it's been interesting to watch. This is incredible, too, because we at Emmanuel are on a relentless pursuit for our friends and family that are far from Christ. And I've gotten to baptize 2 of the kiddos from Joshua Center, have led two young children who've asked about Jesus and heaven and what that looks like with their parents in the room, been able to lead them to Christ. So it's not that the ministry piece was taken away. It was, I want you to focus here. And maybe this is opening a can of worms, but I really, to be able to come to you and say, I think my time on staff was through. My time on staff at Emmanuel is coming to an end was exactly what I said. My identity as Rachel Long from Emmanuel had to turn into my identity, Rachel Long, Christ follower. And there was a little bit of work after your coaching. That's the piece that was like, okay, because it's really scary to think about leading without you to, because I'm on the second tier, but I also have 2 coworkers in that tier too. So 2 counterparts, and then you, and now right now it's me. So, and it's great.
You're gonna do great.
Joshua Center's a 501c3 religious organization.
Yeah.
It's all the things that are like structurally good, but it's not daily thinking, okay, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? It's not going after churches that it's not doing what I know how to do that I know how to do.
Right.
It's
You're
something
stepping
very
out.
new.
Yeah, you're stepping out into a
Which
new
is
space.
exciting.
Yeah,
And
very
I'm
exciting.
thankful for the assignment,
Yeah.
Jesus.
And you have what it takes.
I appreciate that.
You do.
I appreciate
For
that.
sure.
So
Yeah. That's awesome. How can people find out more about the Joshua Center?
yeah, you can go to joshuacenter.org. There's forms for everything you need online there. You can see our story, and you can see my founder story about me and my kid brother. Everything. It's just joshuacenter.org, and it's all on there.
And they can follow on Instagram for their.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. All
Very
of the
cool.
social media is on the website.
Yeah.
So it's the easiest way to get a hold of us.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for helping me talk through this this conversation. Hopefully, it's been helpful to you guys listening, ladies listening, and you are what a blessing you have been to us, and we're going to honor you and support you in your transition. So,
thank you.
Thanks for tuning in this month. Hopefully, we'll see you next month for more content on Church Growth Unleashed. God bless you guys.